Here we are. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to The Hollowed. Super glad to have you all back, and welcome to the channel for anyone who is a new viewer. We do run this channel 100% for charity, benefiting Satchel's Last Resort, which if you follow my Twitter account or my Instagram account or pretty much me anywhere on social media, that is where Lunar, my best puppers ever, except for every other person's puppers whose is the best ever, came from. And I always like to encourage everyone, please always consider rescuing a dog or a pet when you are looking for one. And, don't neglect those older pets because they absolutely can bring just as much joy to your life, especially if you're a lazy old man like me. Having a lazy old girl be my pet is perfect. Without further ado, let's go around and meet our cast and hear who they are playing. We will start off with Sharon.
My name is Sharon Biswas. I'm a game designer, writer, and interactive artist, currently in New York City. And I am playing Jad, who is a Dhampir bard of the College of Spirits.
Woot woot. Next up, we have Anita.
Hello, I'm Anita, and tonight I am playing Elspeth Carter, our divine soul sorceress. Her pronouns, I am she, they pronouns.
Next up is Don.
Hey everybody, I'm Don, he, him, and I am playing Rakesh. Also he, him. Rakesh is a hobgoblin mastermind rogue with a little bit of bard.
Nice. Next up is Carl.
Yep, my name is Carl Nelson. I am playing Barzul, the gargoyle, aka Warforged-ish barbarian. He, him pronouns. My pronouns are also he, him.
Next up is Bird.
Yo, I'm Bird, he, him. I'll be playing Tamarind, also he, him. Tamarind is a wasteland gnome warlock who, by the books, his patron is the undead, but in this game, his patron is a hallowed. Maybe. I don't know. We'll find out.
We'll see. I am Tall Squall, he, him, and am just happy to be here and take you all through this dark world in one of the eras of Valknor, my homebrew world. So, unless there's anything else, without further ado, we will get ourselves started. We rejoin our group. They have been sort of delving into this abandoned stronghold where Rakesh had fallen through the floor and had become separated from the party after the rest of the party delved down through multiple levels of this stronghold structure. They did finally rejoin Rakesh, and through some very fortuitous rolls, were able to avoid combat with a drowned maiden who awaited in a pool of poisonous water, lagoon pond deep under the ground. Having killed her target of her revenge and vengeance, they were able to, with a very high persuasion roll by Elspeth, and also having uncovered that the ring that they had found on a body earlier was in fact the person that she was looking for, avoided combat, and Rakesh was in fact rewarded with a jeweled dagger. As she dissolved back into the mists, the poisonous mist began to rise, forcing our group ever upward, where they found the base of the tower they had seen from outside of the stronghold, and going up 15 stories, so to speak, revolutions of a spiral staircase, each one with a different cell at the center, all some uniqueness to them, but very much the same. Obviously, where prisoners had held, they made their way to a upper hatch that led to a laboratory and pseudo residence for the person that they had dispatched earlier. They found a draft letter that he had been writing up, also a journal of his experimentation, as well as his sort of surgical table and tools and an ornate desk that they sort of took apart. So it's here, as they have just opened the journal our last session, as the party was gathered around, and after reading about a mysterious Subject 14 that had escaped, saw in the journal a picture, a diagram of that sort of cataloged these different experimentations that showed this subject's hand, and it was missing 2 fingers, leaving only 3 left on its hand, which matched the marking that Elspeth had found on Tamrin that appeared on his skin after he became a warlock, with no other memory of the encounter. To sort of place you all back there. This well-appointed study, there is the surgical table with the tools on top of it. There's a sort of small area screened off, just like one of the folding screens that has sort of a pallet and sort of a residential sleeping area and a small table. Hatch that goes to the rooftop with a small ladder that leads up there. A hatch in the floor that leads back down to the cells. And this large, ornate desk. There's also a small bookshelf that seems to contain some more journals. And that's about it. It's a fairly Spartan space, dominated mainly by the desk and by this large surgical table, which would be large enough to place a full-sized humanoid upon. You see, still scattered around the room, these various empty lead boxes that you had seen before, sort of haphazardly scattered. As you all stand there and look down, reading this journal, this page that sort of shocked all of you, you see this sketch, like an anatomical sketch that you would find in a medical treatise. It's the close-up of this hand that looks familiar to Elspeth. It seems to have documented the pre-surgical condition of the subject. Lots of notes scribbled down the sides. It's noted that the fingers were most likely gnawed off for nourishment or for food. Subject 14 had been the longest kept prisoner in the tower and had been skipped over many times for experimentation, basically forgotten, as other subjects were taken from upper cells and they were kept in one of the very lowest of cells.
Poor soul.
Hmm?
Poor soul.
You flip the page. Some of you who are inclined might let out a gasp. It's a Vitruvian Man type surgical illustration showing this humanoid sort of in a spread eagle pose. And it's immediately apparent that Subject 14 was a wasteland gnome like Tamrin. Same features, slighter of build, longer hair, severely malnourished in the drawing. And you can see where the crystal was placed underneath. The incision was placed underneath of the sternum of this poor, small, gnome-like figure. Tamrin, you've never seen another gnome like you before. They've all been orchard gnomes or sort of in-between state that the tappers of earlier generations. But this one is unmistakably your same evolutionary traits.
I don't know. I'm not sure how this comes off to everyone else, but looking at this pretty horrific scene, I don't know. I probably should fill Tamron with like more disgust or revolt or horror. But his initial reaction is kind of putting his hand out on the page, a little wide-eyed, and just very faintly saying, "They're just like me." That being the thing that fills his mind first.
As you say, "You're just like me," Jad, who's been like intently gazing at this diagram, because he feels, for some reason, he hasn't obviously seen this diagram before, but he's seen lots of diagrams like in the same sort of thing like this before, and he's like, "What?" And then so when you say "you're just like me," he like gives this like look of revulsion, and like steps back a little. He's still looking at him. He steps back a little, and he is going to want to talk to Rakesh later.
Rakesh, after reading the letter, was not able to stay down there and continue reading and looking at other things. Like, he felt this drop in his stomach, nausea, and more than anything, he just needed fresh air, and probably walked looking a little pale for somebody with red fur, a little just kind of wide-eyed to the ladder, and went upstairs, out onto the balcony, up onto the top of the tower.
Let's take a second with Rakesh up there. So you pace around. The air is fresh, it's clean. Up above you there is that sort of halo of the beacon up above you that had guided you this far. Not truly in full view, but sort of the aura of it visible, sort of lightening the sky in the direction towards Falcon Spire. You spot the same things Barzul did. You see this war glider in poor condition. You do see a lead box. And you see something familiar to you. It's this strange, low, tube-like structure on a small stand, sort of like a little tripod, pointing up at a steep angle, the back end of it sitting on the ground, the front end of it open. It's a mortar tube. It's how something would launch something over a shell of some sort, some other something. And you see the lead box there beside it.
And I think he's busying himself at first, trying to forget about what he read and what that might imply. His anxieties over Dalvin and how different Dalvin is, and how that scares him, and Tamarind, and what's going on with Tamarind, how it might be tied to this place we're at right now. All of that is terrifying to him existentially. And so, while he's pacing and catching his breath, he goes through the routine. He checks the lead box to see what's inside. He checks the mortar tube to see if it's loaded, just to sort of shore up, like, what is here. If we had to, could we defend ourselves? Or if we're trying to flee this place, do we need to make sure that this thing's out of commission before we run?
Do an investigation check with advantage.
Okay.
You were in the army.
A 20.
On a dirty 20, you examine this. The runes on it seem to be depleted. You know that a lot of times these have runes on them that will sort of charge during the day. It almost can be used as a timer as the runes come to charge whatever might have been loaded into it. You've seen them before to be used to throw vials of poison. You've had them people used basically for Molotov cocktail type ideas, spells. As you look closer on this, especially on a dirty 20, you notice how the inside of it is not the normal smooth round interior, but it is faceted, as though it would hold something of a geometric type shape.
It looks specific, like it was designed to launch a very specific thing, and only something of that exact size and make would be able to launch from it.
Yes, very much so.
And the inside the box, is it entirely empty?
On the natural 20, and because of your affinity toward sand, give me an Arcana check with with advantage.
Only an 11.
Didn't need much for this. You look inside of it, and it is a fine crystalline dust that is inside of it. Sort of a deep purple, like the color of a bruise. Very similar.
Not something I've run across before, though.
No, it absolutely reminds you of the crystals that grew out of the shack back at the refuge. Same color.
All right. Let's see.
With what you read in the letter, pieces start to assemble.
So, Rakesh is staring at that dust for, a long couple of seconds, and then takes out, a small piece of cloth from his pack and empties one of his water canteens into the other canteen, and tries to just kind of sift some of this crystals without touching it into, just to collect some of it inside a container.
You do, and as it passes outside of the lead box and sort of pours in, you can feel, it's almost like a nausea in your stomach. You can feel very weak, but it is perceptible that once it leaves that sort of lead containment, that weird pool that you have felt from Tamrin, you have felt from the transformed back at the refugee camp. Even this tiny amount, far less than any of your vials of sand, there is that sense of void and wanting to pull at the living parts of you, almost pull the beauty and life out of you.
Does that go away when I put it into the canteen?
What's the canteen made of?
Oh, I don't know. It's a water skin, right? So it's probably like leather.
Nope.
Rakesh tosses the water skin onto the ground so it's out of his touch once he screws it. And so he collects some of the dust, and he throws it down, and he spins around, and he takes that mortar, and he's going to launch it over the side of this tower towards the ground below, try to destroy it.
Yeah, you pick it up easy enough, and as the water skin sort of skitters away from you across the rooftop, with distance, that pool comes away. It's just with it being so close to you. And as it passed outside of the lead sort of containment is when it started seeming to pool on you. Distance seems to have the same effect. But you pick it up and launch it, you can hear it ting, 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 sort of clatter down below. You know they are somewhat magical in nature, but also, not indestructible in their nature. Whether it's unusable or repairable, you wouldn't know, as it is 200 and so feet below you amongst the rocks.
He just really wanted to throw something in that moment, and with the distance of the dust and that weapon out of his sight, I think he perches down at the edge of the tower at the top and looks up to the halo of the beacon at Falcon Spire, which is far, far away. They've not come far, and he knows they have a long way to go. And after reading that letter, Rakesh feels like it's possible that his belief in Falcon Spire is a lie, that it's not a safe haven, that he's been naive, and he's grappling with those thoughts of, am I leading my comrades into a trap? Is Falcon Spire just as awful as the rest of this world has been? He's feeling a loss of hope. But he just sits there and looks up and watches, trying to sort of recenter himself.
Let's go back downstairs to Barzul, who had been upstairs and was sort of looming in the background of this unfolding.
I think Barzul is less interested than Tamarind and the others in the pages. And at this point, might sort of stalk around to that bed area and just sort of place hands and sit. It probably gives like a very loud, like creaking,
Yeah.
It might break even.
Yeah, it's basically on the floor, so it doesn't. Yeah. It's not a framed bed. It's really more of a pallet type idea. Yeah. But yes.
And I think for the first time today, it's been a very long day. Sort of. I think normally would look for sleep, but he doesn't feel tired. Sort of sits there, scratching a little bit at his claws, almost nervously or uncomfortably, still trying to figure this out.
The scratching brings to mind that cell far down below. Second cell you came to out of the 15, covered with hash marks. "14 cells below you."
Just sort of sits thinking about that room and the hash marks. And to him, it's not days, it's years, lives. And just sort of, it's sort of awash a bit. Sort of internal conflict of all this past that has weighed on him. And this sort of new body, And for the first time, maybe he thinks, this is the beginning.
Elspeth.
I think Elspeth reading seeing the state of the person and reading all the things that was done to them and just feeling how palpable their desperation is going to go down the hatch again and find the cell for number 14.
You can travel down circle after circle, sort of as tired as you were coming up all those steps, almost imagining that this type of person always sort of taking the closest victim and never bothering to even remember that they had placed others further down, much less this small soul, so much like Tamron. And you get all the way down, 14 cells down the stairs, and see that door and the hash marks there on the walls, and you can just see every surface covered.
Is it still locked?
Barzul had unlocked it and gone in.
Barzul had broken it open.
Yeah.
Elspeth is just going to go into the middle of the room and sit and just look at all the hash marks. And lose count. And then hold the pendant. Something like this is what made him. And Elspeth, for the first time, is going to pray. I know you're not around anymore. And I know you probably don't listen. Because maybe you can't hear us. Or maybe you don't want to hear us anymore. But there are repercussions that I don't even think you could have accounted for. And then she just sit in silence, knowing that there won't be an answer.
Back up to Tamron, you're sort of there across from Jad, who sort of backed away in disgust, looking at you almost as though like someone would look at his expression almost reflexively of someone and how they would look at a lab experiment and not another person.
It's very toothy.
Sorry, mouse problems. Yeah. It's all there. Tamron knows how horrible this is, how terrible this is. He's seen it, he can feel it. It's radiating from everyone around him. But still, there's this almost sense of wonder, I guess, that there's maybe somebody like him around. These people he's traveling with, they're amazing, they're incredible, they're the closest he's ever felt to other people, in spite of how short they've known each other and in spite of the terrible things they've been through. And yet it's still just so mind-blowing to him to see this reflection of himself. Someone who might actually be able to identify and bond with him on a level no one else in the world can. And so while he's still just looking at this image, at a point he'll kind of close the journal and like almost like pull it to his chest. His hands like crossed over it, and he'll probably turn towards Jad. Not, reading the room correctly, not giving off the same vibe that he probably should, but looks to Jad with almost a sense of like hope and near excitement before seeing that face that so many people have made towards him.
Oh, I'm sorry.
His entire life.
Yeah.
The perpetual other.
Yeah.
And so that's a very grounding moment for him. And Jad, you probably see the small smile on his face really quickly give way. His shoulders slouch, his posture kind of go inwards, looking down. And he kind of trades another glance or two with you, but unsure of how to proceed. Get down from the chair and probably go sit over. Apologize for the pun, but go sit by the stone-faced Barzul, who seems relatively unfazed by a lot of what's going on.
So I've got a quick question. I got a quick question for Bird, sort of above game. Does Tamron put together that he's met this person? That he's met Subject 14? That Subject 14 is who visited him?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So
what I'm trying to get across here, that even that realization that this is the person who made him, it's still almost second to somebody else is like me out there.
No, absolutely. I caught that. I just wasn't. I didn't know if it was just in the picture that you were seeing all the similarities and not necessarily what everyone else is seeing. My God,
no, for sure,
the horrible things. But you're saying he's got those same sort of scaly patches that I do.
Sure.
Our eyes look the same. Our sort of these oversized eyes and stuff. I didn't realize it. I didn't. Just want to check in with you to see whether it was just with the picture or also connecting all the way back to.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, we're good to go, man.
just so I know how to play things moving forward.
So as Tamron backs away, you're holding the book to your chest.
Yeah.
So Jad is not. I mean, you've heard Jad do his like storytelling performance stuff, right? When he like tells you like weirdly creepy stories and you feel better about them because the world is not as dark as the stories, right? So you realize he suddenly smiles cheerfully, and this is completely artificial. Like normally he's good at performing and acting, right? But he puts on this completely artificial, cheery smile, and he turned and said, Tamron, I would love to look at that book for a little while. It might give us clues about like what's been happening, and like we totally need to know that, right?
I'm gonna go ahead and roll an insight check for Tamron.
Yeah,
you can roll me a deception check if you would like.
I don't think you're gonna need it.
What am I trying to deceive? Sure, if you want me to. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you're trying to deceive him, or you're not, you're saying the deception is so.
It's not a very good deception, so I'm gonna say I'll voluntarily fail it or whatever,
Yeah. Dude, I rolled a 3, so
yeah. So you can. I'm gonna say because my deception, I'm gonna voluntarily fail the deception. You know that I'm upset. Like the cheery demeanor is a facade. But Jay, you tell me if based on Tamron's roll, which is a 3, I should tell him anything else, my motive is or whatever.
I'm just gonna let you all play this regardless of rules.
Great. Okay.
If you want to give him the book, or if you want to hold on to it, that if you want to I'm gonna let the two of y'all dance this dance
I love
as role players.
So I'm gonna say, since you rolled a 3, you know no more than that but it's clear that I'm not happy or cheerful or just like lightly, oh, let me read this book. Like, I want to read this book and I'm upset about something.
So Tamron kind of clenches the book to his chest a little bit tighter for a second before looking up towards you, and will very slowly nod and very sheepishly start walking towards you with the book, and actually think he's going to avoid your gaze as he approaches. He's just kind of looking kind of around you and down, and he'll just say, there could be some really relevant and interesting stuff. And he'll go to give you the book, and he'll pause for a second before he says, I'm sorry. For whatever I did. I'm sorry. And he'll hand you the book. It's kind of like a peace offering.
Unfortunately, Jad is not paying attention to you at all. So the fact that you apologize, Jad is not thinking about that. He doesn't actually snatch the book. He you see he takes the book and he's very tense, and he gingerly takes, and he goes to the desk, and he takes out from his cloak the other book, the one that Rakesh gave him, because now in front of him are 2 books that both supposedly remind him of his past, and he has no idea what is going on. And he puts the books on the table, and he does not take a deep breath because he is not focusing on breathing right now. But he sits and he opens both the books, and he begins to look at both the books, study them or read them or something. And you can see that he's a college of spirits, right? The area around him is becoming slightly I don't know, ectoplasmic, I don't know, like as though he's using his ethereal power to talk to ghosts, whatever. But you can feel something weird as he's desperately trying to use any means possible to what the hell is going on, these 2 books, what, and he's freaking out, but he is very calmly freaking out. And you can tell he's freaking out because he is not blinking, not breathing, heartbeats completely off. All his bodily functions that he has to think about to make work none of them are on anymore.
Tamron, there still is this large rolled up piece of parchment that you found. Whether you want to save it for later or remember it, as a DM, I'm reminding you, Bird, whether or not there's any motivation to deal with that now or later.
I mean, we might as well get every terrible piece of information we can, right? Tamron will kind of amble his way back towards Barzul and probably take a seat somewhere next to Barzul. And I don't think he's really going to have much of an opener for conversation here. I think he's still a little worried about doing something wrong. So he will just kind of silently take out that piece of paper and unfurl it within view of Barzul.
Tamron, you've never seen something like this before, but Barzul, you have. This is a map of exquisite quality, probably produced by arcane means. For the people you contracted in the armies, both elves and humans, these are the types of maps that were produced for generals, for tacticians. it shows the whole sort of southern region of the wastes and battlefields in extensive detail, all the way up to including some of the areas on top of the Falcon Spire Plateau.
Barzul will sort of, when Tamrin comes in, I think Barzul will sort of sit up a little bit, snapping him out of that, not memory, but state. And sort of watch Tamrin sit beside him. And as the map unfurls, sort of leans in a little bit, having seen these before. Are there any markings around where we are?
You're going to have to do me an intelligence check
Oh,
to read this, unless you happen to have a cartographer's tools.
do not, but at least I'm not straight up.
It's one of those. It's a big, detailed map, and there's no arrow that says you are here. I mean, you kind of generally know where you are, but I mean, yeah.
It's a flat roll, but it's just a 7.
I mean, with your current sort of mental state, your perspective, just maybe even the fatigue of the day, you can't get a real bead on anything other than major landmarks, but you can't figure out the relationship to this place to them at this time.
He lets out one of those like almost dusty sort of exhalations.
Tamrin will kind of be perplexed by what he sees, more perplexed by this very loud, dusty sigh next to him, and look up towards Barzul with a kind of face of confusion, and just say, "Yeah, I've never seen anything like it either. I can't make heads or tails of it. Can you?"
It is a tactician's map.
What do they use them for?
Many things. Planning, troops, deployments, supply lines.
Have you used one?
At some points, yes.
To do what?
Oh no.
There's definitely a pause. Nothing worth mentioning now.
Okay.
This is very valuable.
Oh, well. And he very quickly rolls it back up and immediately extends it to Barzul.
Sort of, I feel like Barzul is not used to people giving him things that's not payment or taken more by force or intimidation. And so it's a little, he sort of like seems momentarily just like looks at the like generous offer. We'll keep it safe. Puts it in the pack.
Let's jump back up to Rakesh. Are you staying for the night or coming back down?
Rakesh is self-aware enough to know that sometimes he, for all of his optimism and for all of his sort of go-get-em kind of attitude, slips into a dark place. And it's not just the environment. And he's, fought in war, and he's seen some pretty dark magic recently, but it's not the first time. It's him. This was a part of him before he ever left his island. And once he realizes this is me, that we don't know, as he stares up at the Falcon Spire beacon, we don't know that it's a trap. We don't know that there's not safe haven up there. There could be people who are in danger in Falcon Spire. They could be part of whatever this wizard's plan is. It gives him a little bit of comfort, and he is going to sleep up here, unless somebody comes and wakes him up. But before he goes to bed, he takes out his pouch of sand, and he swirls it around in his hand, and he begins to hum off key a song. It's something like a sea shanty that his mother sang to him when he was young. And it's not very good, but he remembers it in his head as he's humming it, and he begins to dance around in a circle, spinning and pirouetting on top of the tower top and the moonlight and in the light of the beacon. And he's spraying the sand up into the air as he does, and using his magic to swirl it around and create an image on top of this tower. And when the song ends, it's the images of the red and yellow and purple sands of his beach on his island, with the tropical trees that reach up and tree line the shore. The ocean waves gently lapping against the beach, and he's exhausted by the time he finishes. And so he lays down, and he sort of, as much as he can, almost tries to cradle one tree in particular that was very important to him. It's a tree that he sat at when he met his first love, when he was too young to really understand love fully, but he felt it. And as he sort of carves into the sand with his fingernail his initials and his partner's initials, just like he did back then, I think he drifts to sleep under the moonlight.
Okay. Elspeth, do you stay down in the cell for the night or come back up? What are your plans?
I think after an hour of no response, Elspeth will come back up and then set a bedroll down on the floor at the top of the tower where it's a little bit more comfortable. And have a fitful sleep.
Okay. Jad.
So before going to sleep, so Jad's looking in these two books, and he's getting more and more like confused, because both of them are like bringing back like glimpses and memories. He's confused, and so he's going to slam the two books shut, like slam them shut, which instantly all the ethereal energies around him like, right? And he grabs the two and he's storming, like thunders, thunder wave, that's a spell I know. He thunders up the stairs to where he saw Rakeesh last go. And he opens the hatch, and he like walks through this like beautiful colored sand that's like, Rangoli style spread around him. He does not care about it, and he stands in front of Rakeesh, who's asleep or trying to go to sleep or about to go to sleep, and he like harshly like croaks out. He's like, Rakeesh, tell me who I am.
Rakeesh's instinct is probably like reach for his weapon at first as he startles up, and then he sees, you there standing over him. Probably for a moment, his eyes flicker down to his sand mural, which has been smudged as you stormed across, and back up to you. And he stretches slowly and sits up, but he doesn't stand up. And you he's not hiding it. I think it'd probably be pretty easy to tell that Rakesh is conflicted and struggling with something himself. But he answers you after a moment, and he says, I thought I knew, but to be honest, I am not so sure.
I'm holding the two books. You can see one of them is the book you gave me, right? And you can see both of them, obviously. And I open the other book, not the one you gave. I open one of the books. So tell me what's in the book you gave me, Rakesh.
So the Book of Eldath is a long history through the experiences of many people in the war that has taken place in this region over hundreds of years, as dictated by a man named Brother Kendall.
Okay, so I'm like, did we know Brother Kendall? Did
Dalvin did, yes.
Okay, so I'm like, can you describe what Brother Kendall looks like again, Rakesh? Do you know?
I can't if you don't have it off the top of your head, Rakesh.
I know he's a dragonborn,
yeah,
but I don't
he's
remember.
Sort of a lean emerald dragonborn, so not a green, but actually has this jewel-like skin. He was a mixture of a green dragonborn and a silver dragonborn, which gave him this jewel-like, beautiful jeweled scales of emerald green. And he has this sort of older, kind face, very lean, tall, lithe in his motions, very deliberate in his movements, and almost even the simple movements of his almost looked like a graceful dance.
So I open your book and I say, I remember a man with jewel green scales and like lithe dancing motions, and I like throw the book at your feet. And then I open the other book and I'm like, I also know the best way to dissect someone and keep them alive so I could draw the pain out as long as possible and put it into a bottle. And I throw the journal at your feet and I look at you and I'm like, who am I?
I have a question. So Rakesh knew Dalvin, like they were really close.
Yeah.
Since Dalvin's come back, obviously he has a thing for blood. That is for sure. But in terms of his mannerisms, the way he speaks, the way he moves, is any of that familiar to Rakesh at all, or is it like a different person?
Well, that's the thing, is there are times, like when you all were performing that song together, in the heat of the moment, where pretty much muscle memory, in those types of situations when it's reactionary things, things that would be just a quick reaction, a turn of the smile, these very small little things, but whenever there's an active personality there, it is like it's someone different. But there's these weird, almost haunting moments of Dalvin that emerge from the Jad personality.
So Jad would definitely see a flash, just momentary flash of fear. Rakesh probably recoils, just slides back on his butt a little bit, for the same.
Smudges the thing more.
Right. And then he reaches out and he puts a hand on top of his book, and then very, very, a little more hesitantly, I guess, puts a hand on the other book as well. And looking you right in the eyes, he says, Dalvin, I have no doubt in my mind or my heart that you are the person that I knew, that I came to care for very deeply. But I think that whatever dark magic is happening here, it is changing you. I believe it is changing Tamrind. I do not understand this magic. There are moments where the person I knew, the Delvin I loved, bleeds through. And there are moments ferocious, terrifying, that you have knowledge like this. And he taps the book written by the wizard. It is perhaps you are not one person, but you are many. I do not know how.
Okay. Jay, I want to make a saving throw. So tell me what I should do. So as Rakesh is looking at you, sorry, as Shad is looking at Rakesh, what am I saying? Because I'm imagining Rakesh look at me. He, in his mind, he hears two voices, like, you know, those two voices. So one of them is like sees Rakesh, like that flash of fear, and the first instinct is, Rakesh is scared and upset. You should go comfort him. And the other voice says, this creature is scared and upset. You should take advantage and make him tell you, right? And so Jad is very he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know if he believes Rakesh or doesn't believe Rakesh. He's, you know, vampire-ish, so he's sometimes impulsive, but he can control himself. So Jay, I want to make a roll to see if I control myself or I like yell at Rakesh about like, you're lying to me, blah blah blah. What should I do?
This is not going to be a standard roll.
Okay. This is so exciting.
The vampire side of you is much more dominant.
Yeah.
Whereas the other is literally, above game. The corpse that you inhabit, having sort of almost like phantom. It's almost, it's like phantom pains when someone has an amputation. That's basically is what's left. These weird electrical, spiritual, whatever pieces of soul still left in the flesh that you've now inhabited. I want you to roll me a D100. If it is under 25,
okay,
Dalvin. If it is over 25, it's the vampire.
Okay, great. So there is a D100 in thingy, right? Yes.
Yep, there is.
Okay, so I rolled a D100. Oh my god! I rolled a 19.
In this moment, and what catches you, what completely makes that other vampiric voice just almost violently explode away like the ectoplasm. Is a single word Rakesh said. The Dalvin I loved.
Okay, I was totally, if I failed, I was gonna cast Phantasmal Force on you to force you to tell me the information, even if you don't know it, right? So I'm going to expend reflexively. I'm going to expend a use of my illusion spell, which is my strongest illusion spell, Silent Image.
Okay.
So I'm going to just cast that. Bam. And suddenly, and this is reflexively, he can't help it. The area around you, like we're no longer in this on the rooftop with this like gyrocopter thing there. Instead, we are where I was, where I woke up, right? Like with the like ritual chamber, with the like weird plinth, with the robes, all these like corpses around me. It's only image, so the smell, but they're there for me because it's like kind of my memory, right? And so all around you is that. Obviously, I mean, you know it's not true, so you don't need to roll to disbelieve or whatever. You know, like what's happening. Like it's some weird magic. You're a bard, you know illusions. But I suddenly crumple, like a moment ago I was standing at you, like looking at you, being like angry, like tell me who I am. But I like crumple like onto you or into your arms or at your feet, whatever you think. And I start like sobbing, and then this image around us is now intermingling with that memory I have of the like battlefield with the guy with that strange man in the black shroud reaching out to me being like you will do nicely. And like that, and I'm like I start sobbing, but I have no water left in me. I haven't fed in a while. So I am
Come on, you
like
fed like an hour ago.
I did. Okay, well, I'm overcome with emotion and for dramatic purpose. Like Le Chiffre, you can see like blood trickling out of my
Okay.
eyes. Yeah, like the Bond villain. Um,
So I'm going to pick up this a little bit.
yeah.
So you say these words to Jad, and you see that hardness in his eyes soften. And it's like one of those reflexive moments where you see Dalvin again. And this sand that has been disrupted at his feet begins to pick up and swirl as this reflexive magic, something you've watched and familiar with and something you have participated in with him, begins to pick up the sand and redistribute it and starts to form this image around you, this tower, this dark, evil place. It is covered in runes that are almost sickening to look at, not because of any graphic detail, but just malevolent in their shape and construct. And as you look around, and the image from this sand that was this beautiful gold and purple, and the islands of your home get redistributed and become black with this dark place. And you see one by one form into these sort of humanoid corpses, just outlines, not super detailed, until you, looking down at Jad, who is crumpled right behind them, you see Dalvin hanging on a wall. Behind him, you see carved into his skin these malevolent runes. They're nauseating, they're disgusting, they make your whole being just want to recoil from the evil pouring off of them. And there's movement over your shoulder, and behind you, you see this figure. Dark, hooded, emaciated face. Nothing like Dalvin, but there's a smile as they're looking out towards these bodies that are arrayed around them. In front of them, a strange crystalline vase, jar, phylactery that you can see blood flowing. Sort of the sand turned red is flowing from these bodies, trying to infuse this container. And you see a smile on that face behind you. And it's the smile you see every time when Jad interacts or talks with you. You see what you see in Jad so much of the time. You recognize this person as what, who has inhabited your friend, your scribe brother.
Rakesh doesn't know what he feels because he's feeling a lot of different things as he watches this. And I imagine like Jad has collapsed down towards Rakesh, and Rakesh has stood up a little higher on his knees to wrap his arms around Jad, Dalvin. And if he's bleeding tears, if he's crying blood, Rakesh should probably very idly, as he's terrified looking at this image over Jad's shoulders, lick his thumb and try to clear up, wipe the blood off of his cheek. But he's doing that because he cares, but it's also just sort of instinctive, reflective, because he's watching this unfold. And when he can't take it anymore, probably Jad would definitely be aware that his body is quivering.
Oh yeah.
What fear smells like, right? It smells like Rakesh right now. Rakesh casts Minor Illusion, and he casts it 30 feet up into the air in the direction of Falcon Spire. So as this sand is swirling around and creating this image, this memory, this story, he picks a point of it and pushes that sand away just enough to create a little sphere of light, as though you could actually see the beacon, even though you can't really see the beacon from here. And he would try to place a hand on Jad's chin and direct him up towards that light if Jad would look.
Yeah. He's because he let the evil side, so he's like, what am I? And he's gonna.
And he definitely tries to turn you so you're looking up there and not looking at that back there.
Right. So I don't see it. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean, you were immersed in this tower. You were there, and this illusion is, you're trapped in it again. You're feeling those same feelings, and it's almost like living in a memory. It's like the ghosts and your magic coming to haunt you and become manifest. And then instead of being alone, Rakesh is there. And through that darkness, certainly the darkness that Dalvin would have felt in the last moments of his life, a silvery light beams down through the darkness to surround both of you as you both look up out of that dark chamber in this sort of cone of blue silver light towards that hope that certainly drew Rakesh, and perhaps the part of Dalvin that was still alive as well. And you all are silhouetted by this blue light as you look up to the sky above. I'm going to step away from you guys and leave that vignette just to sort of percolate, because damn. Elspeth's going to sleep. Barzul, Tamrind, do you all fade off into your long rest, or anything further you would like to do with the night?
I actually do want to push something.
Okay.
And definitely let me know if it's too above table, but I just am curious. I think even in character, I'm curious. Tamrind sees Elspeth return and lay up the bedroll, and tries his best to be quiet, but I think is still, unless Barzul is moved, is still sitting there right next to him. And we'll just kind of say in very faint whispers, clumsy enough that Elspeth, if you're still awake, you can probably still hear him. But will just kind of look up to him with some concern and be like, "Did you hear her back there? She's worried about where we're going. I think she said she'd go, but I don't know if she really wants to."
Thinking you're safe anywhere in this world, it's a trap.
But aren't you a protector? Isn't that what you did back there for us? That's what everybody at the camp said, that was kind of like your job.
Jobs. People change. I found myself in that place for what seemed like the first time. And I think also it was the last place I wanted to be.
So what now?
I think his gaze. Elspeth is in the room top, right?
Yep, main part of the room.
Yeah, I'm just getting a bedroll set up in the corner.
His gaze will probably slip across towards Elspeth. You follow her. I follow her.
Why not? While you're setting up your bedroll, Elspeth, you'll very suddenly hear Tamrin raise his voice and say, Hey, Elspeth!
Yeah.
We've been talking.
Yeah, I kind of heard a little.
Okay, good. This is easier then.
Probably heard you on the roof.
I mean, Barzul's voice kind of echoes a little bit. It's weird.
Oh, right. Sorry. Haven't been very chatty before.
That's okay.
We talked earlier about maybe not being great about going to Falcon Spire, about not being great about anything really, but I just want to make it clear, and after talking to Barzul, I think it's kind of set. Whatever you want to do, we're here for you. So if you don't want to go, we don't have to go.
Oh.
We can go wherever. And he's just kind of like looking back between the two of them.
Do you want to know something?
Yeah.
No one's ever really asked me where I wanted to go before. I always went wherever the caravan went, and, well, we just followed the road way station to way station and just survived. But I think I'm done just trying to survive. I think I want to live. And if that means I don't know where I could even go to start this, I want to see the land the way it should be. How I get there is another matter entirely. But honestly, I'd also just be happy helping people. I'd be happy just making some kind of medical tent like down in the village, but not controlled by the military, and just healing people. But if I could also heal the land at the same time. But again, it's been beyond my lifetime beyond the lifetime of my grandparents or even my great-great-great-grandparents. There has to be a way, though.
Question above the table. Thorgan has been alive for 5 centuries or whatever.
Yep. Since before the war started.
Since before the war. And is not from originally a place near the war.
Yeah, he's from an area to the south of here called the Emerald Highlands.
This war and all the time he has spent in it, how far out has it reached? Like, would he know of a place they could go?
He knows it is not to the north, because you are very far to the south right now. You know, it is reached all the way up, almost beyond anywhere that Thargan would have explored. He knows there are places to the north, and you would just hope you could eventually get there, but he knows it is, you know, truly hundreds of miles to the north of them, because unfortunately the Orchards of Eldath is easy war waging area. There are not a whole lot of north-south barriers. The barrier that is to the south is a very large river and sort of waterfalls and cliff system that the Emerald Highlands, where Thargan is from, those highlands sort of stretch far to the south. It is where a lot of the Highland dwarves live, sort of clan culture, kind of rough and tumble place, but also not touched by war just because of its own. You basically have to cross the river and climb the cliffs and against the waterfalls to reach the highlands. So the dwarves have been able to stay pretty much apart from this, other than ones who came down, like Thargan, to actively look.
So Barzul will turn to Elspeth, sort of putting a hand on the pack where he knows the map is. To the south are difficult. If you want to flee this place.
Oh, I don't want to flee this place. I don't want to give up on this place. I want to help this place. And that might sound insane, but I think that's my purpose. Help this place, heal the people, heal the land. That's silly.
I have seen this war since the beginning. One person will not heal it. One person can't. One person can do so much more destruction. One person can heal. Everyone is bent on destroying it.
But one person can inspire others. And if that's what that takes, I'll gladly give my life.
Just to add to the scene real quick, Barzul, whether you want to acknowledge it or even see it or not, Tamron is absolutely like staring at Elspeth with nothing but like radiant hope and just the biggest like grin, like nodding along with everything she's saying.
And I think as this is happening, Barzul sort of looks at her. Just waiting, just something sort of caught in his memory.
You okay, Barzul?
Yes, Elodie.
That's not my name. But I know
Sorry,
the one who carried it.
Elspeth.
How did you know my aunt?
A long time ago. At this point, what was him looking at you, Elspeth, just again slips away. Sort of looks down.
You keep looking away. You haven't wanted to make eye contact with me since we started traveling together. What is going on?
You look too much like her. Sort of pushes himself up.
My mother's twin. It would make sense. I look a little bit similar. But you're not really answering my question. You're kind of avoiding it. You said you knew her, but you're not answering why you're avoiding me. Why you haven't made eye contact the entire time we've been traveling together. I know it's only been half of a day. And I know I look like her. But you're not answering the important questions. How do you know my aunt? You said you knew her, but not how. And I think at this point, Elspeth begins to glow.
I love this image of like Barzul, this hulking gargoyle, like wings
and this
slightly unfurled.
tiny
human glowing.
And I think the pendant around the neck begins to glow as well. How did you know my aunt? And is not looking away from Barzul, making direct eye contact.
I think at this point, he picks up his gaze and eyes beginning to also pick up that light and that glow. And just lets out a rumbling growl. You were my bounty. As was she once. Not like this. And he sort of looks down to the hands. Today it's brought me something else.
The dwarf, the one I wasn't able to save.
Thorgan.
And what were you supposed to do once you obtained your bounty?
Bring you to those who paid me for it.
And who were they?
Well, reminder.
This was the humans. They were attempting basically to replace her aunt, the generals and nobles who her aunt was the healer for. So you were contracted by nobles of Falconspire.
I'll sort of look up in the direction of where Falconspire is.
I just about did your job for you.
Yes. Oh.
And my aunt?
Brought it to someone else. And we'll look a little bit at Tamarind, remembering that feeling that Tamarind has evoked in people. Those things, the empty things. He made the first. He needed a spark to do it.
I'm going to bed. Try not to kill me while I sleep.
That wasn't directed at me.
I think
It
Mars
is
will
right
sort
at our break time, so I think we'll take our break on that moment for everyone to breathe again. Guys, that was amazing. Just
I'm okay.
That was wild. What a lot happened in that first 90 minutes. Holy cow.
I was
Great job.
rolling a die to like try to keep from saying the name, and it was like I rolled a nat 1 on my save, and I was like every time like that happened, I was like, is it gonna be now? Is it gonna be now? And I was like, fuck, it's now.
it was perfection. Yep. I mean, that moment was building perfectly, and then the dice told it, as they often do. Hey, folks, go grab a drink or like just a breath after these last tense 45 minutes. This is why we play D&D, man. We will be back in just a moment. Bye-bye. And we are back in a not tense at all session of the Hollowed. We're just going to jump right back into this. So, everyone was settling in for their long rest, somewhat awkwardly, somewhat hopefully, and up on the roof, and with promises not to kill others in their sleep, down below. But our party has taken their long rest. They have also leveled up during that time, so folks will be have some new skills and things. And I think we will start upstairs, mainly because actually, we will not start upstairs. I completely lied. 100% did I lie. Elspeth. As you sleep, your mind sort of reeling from everything that you've said and heard. Your mind starts traveling backward in a dream. You have very few memories of your Aunt Elodie. You were very young. A few fragments of her singing, her sneaking you sweets when you weren't supposed to have them, shared jokes when you sat next to each other at the dinner table, when your mother expected you to both be so very serious, and you all would get yourselves into sort of giggling fits to torment your mom, both of you probably equally. You haven't dreamed about or thought about this particular time in a long, long time. It's a memory that is clearest to you. And it's the day that they came and she left. You remember how impressed you were with the brass buttons and their perfectly straight rows on the formal uniforms that they wore, and how tall and handsome all these officers who came to your little caravan looked. Remember how your mother went rigid when they arrived, and then into a rage when Elodie said yes to their request for her to go with them. Your father and brothers had to hold your mother back to keep her hands from clawing the eyes out of the officers. She was so enraged by this. But you remember now more than you ever have before, and so clearly. You remember Elodie taking you to the side and saying goodbye to you. And you looking up into her eyes and seeing this wistful happiness. And you now recognize the other thing that as a child you didn't know that you saw in her eyes. And it was a sense of purpose. You remember also a few days later, it was the only time your mother ever hit you. She was yelling at your father and called Elodie stupid. And you retorted that your mother was just jealous because Elodie was going to make so much more of her life than she did. And that starts you awake. You can still sort of feel the sting on your cheek, and there's almost that connection of, that your mother had so often turned Elodie's leaving into this tragedy. But you now can see that purpose that she had, that she felt, that no matter where it might have led her, she left and gave her life for something she believed in. Sit there in the darkness for a moment. The gargoyle, still as stone. Tamron snoring softly.
And I think there's one specific scene that's playing back in her head. It's when she was taken off to the side and Aunt Elodie spoke to her. And Elspeth pulled out a small, I made this for you. It's an owl bear. And it's a little wooden carving. Very crude, like the ones that little kids do. He'll keep you safe.
She takes it from you and she smiles and she goes, I'll take it everywhere.
Thank you.
I'll never leave it behind.
His name is Hubert.
She looks and goes, well, hello, Hubert. Are you going to keep me safe?
I wish I could go with you.
She sort of looks at you and smiles and nods and she says, not this time. But, she sort of whispers at you conspiratorially, you're going to have so many adventures. I just know it.
I hope so. It's not going to be as fun without you.
You promise that you'll keep laughing at the dinner table even though I'm not there?
I'll drive Mom extra crazy for you.
Perfect.
Okay. I love you lots.
I love you too, and she just puts you in a huge hug. And as she hugs you, you feel this sort of warmth and peace flow into you from her.
You always give the best hugs.
You give pretty good hugs too.
Better go before I go fight some soldiers.
Yeah. Do you see how handsome they were, though?
Some of the girls were pretty cute.
Yeah, the girls are cute too. If I can, I'll get you something fancy and try to send it back to you, okay?
I'll expect it. The next way station.
I'll do my best. And she takes Hubert and squeezes him real tight. You stay safe as well.
I will. I gotta keep everybody else safe.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Now hurry up.
Okay. You be good, but not too good.
Reggie gave me a knife, so I might try and fight some people. That's how I made Hubert.
You keep it sharp.
I will.
She sort of looks at your mother, who was just on sort of the other side of the camp, and kind of sighs a little bit. You could tell that she would love to go and talk with her, but it's just not what's going to be able to happen. So she turns and goes with the soldiers, and you see a shimmering portal open, and they step through, and just as it disappears, you see her look over her shoulder back at you.
Little Elspeth will wipe the tears from her eyes and then run over to play with her brothers.
You do. Back in the present, in the darkness, you remember that hug and that warmth and that peace, and it's suddenly more familiar to you now, as it's that same feeling that flows through you when the magic and the healing and that connection to the land comes.
And I think in that moment, Elspeth will recognize that while her aunt felt that sense of purpose for fulfilling her duty to the war effort, Elspeth, I think, realizes that she's not her aunt, despite what Barzul says. They're not the same person. Elspeth has to move on her own path and find her own purpose. And hopefully one day she'll have that same look in her eyes when she knows what that is.
Okay. Do you go back to sleep?
Yeah.
You fall back
A little
to
bit more comforted.
Yeah. You fall back to sleep, and we'll now move back upstairs onto the roof. The sun beginning to peek over the horizon. Dawn bringing light to Rakish and Jad, Dalvin. With the morning. Around you, the sand is all fallen, it's scattered. Winds moved it around. So Rakish wakes up first.
Can I ask what sleeping position we're in, Don?
Probably, I imagine Rakish is like at some point while the images were still spinning around, like slowly like laid Jad down. And I imagine like maybe he attempted to spoon him and like just kind of like gently stroke his hair until he fell asleep and calmed down.
You're very tall, right?
He's like 6 feet tall.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Perfect. Yeah. I'm just imagining how we wake up.
yeah. When Rakish wakes up in the morning, he does so with energy and not a clear direction, but a purpose that drives him. And the first thing he does is like tries not to wake up Dalvin. And he sees the 2 books that are lying on top of the tower, and he takes the book that he is not familiar with, the journal, and he puts that away in his pack, and he places the other book, the thick tome, the book of Eldath, the book of the war's history and the people's stories, on the outside, like really close to Jad's arms, where Jad's arms might be, wherever he's positioned in the morning. And And then he gets to work with his little tiny kit to create a small controllable fire on top of the stone tower and start cooking some of these large corpse crab claws that he salvaged from hunting in the underkeep, because everybody's going to need breakfast. And so this is something I can do.
Yep.
He is concerned about what's going on downstairs. Like, he doesn't know, he hasn't heard from anyone, but also the time away has, I think, given him a little bit of comfort too.
Okay. Down below, Tamron, you are awakened to a very familiar smell. It's not quite bacon, but almost, to Tamron, it probably almost has those same sort of nostalgic feelings of, home-cooked breakfast, of these claws being roasted up above.
Yeah, he definitely sniffs the air a little bit before, like, eyes bolting open. So at this point, is Elspeth or Barzul awake and active, or like, where are the others in the room at this point?
Well, Barzul, I think, is pretty much close to you. I mean, you don't really sleep as a gargoyle, but you kind of go into sort of a stillness of, statue-like stillness. Elspeth, I think her role was out in the center. You can say you curled up wherever, whether you curled up on this pallet or made your own bedroll. Light is starting to come in, so I think everyone is certainly... y'all went to bed fairly early. I mean, it was 10:30, 11 o'clock. So, people have gotten a good 8 hours sleep as the sun is coming up. So it's not as though you all were of such exhaustion that you would have wanted to necessarily sleep in. But we haven't had a long rest, so some people might be sleeping later than others.
It's harder for Jad to wake up in sunlight, so he's going to sleep a little bit longer than everyone else.
Carl, like, what position or form is Barzul in, like, during a rest? Like, what does that look like?
Right.
You are muted.
I can hear Carl.
I can hear him.
Oh, I didn't hear him. I'm sorry.
Oh, weird.
Okay, that was crazy.
Barzul is actually only needs 6 hours in this sort of like stillness. And I think probably when that time came up, like, he probably went down into the chambers below.
Okay.
And so he's not in the room right now.
Okay.
I would say that Tamron and Elspeth, you definitely would have heard a giant gargoyle making their way through a hatch and down the stairs. I mean, you can roll a stealth check if you want, but...
I would like to.
Hey.
16.
Ooh, okay. Surprisingly quiet for a large giant gargoyle.
Some of the old skills still stand.
A 3 on that perception means, Tamron slept peacefully through that movement. So, then
Elspeth rolled a 1.
It's been a crazy time. I mean,
That's stress sleep.
Yeah, stress sleep.
Yeah.
Stress narcolepsy.
Tamron will wake up and actually look around the room. His intent actually was to approach Barzul first, but since Barzul is no longer in the room, he will kind of look confused about that before approaching Elspeth and, like, very gently, with a lot of hesitation at first, then, like, kind of just, like, tapping her on her shoulder, I guess, and just, "Hey, Elspeth, hey, are you awake? Hey, are you awake?"
I am.
Okay, good.
When you ask someone if they're awake, usually it wakes them up. So the answer is always going to be yes.
Okay, so you were awake, and I didn't bug you. Okay, cool.
You woke me up, but yes, I'm awake now.
I'm sorry. Well,
You're good.
I have good news. It smells like they're making breakfast upstairs. So I think there's food ready to go. It smells amazing. I'm gonna go check on Why don't you go upstairs? Yeah.
Well, I'm not dead, so at least he kept that part of his promise.
You asked him not to, and yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go get some. Was that corpse crab?
And just wide-eyed grin, like you see drool forming in the side of his mouth before like
Wait,
he
just be
wipes
clear,
it away.
this is that mushroom, right?
Oh no, this is the corpse crab, the like crab claws that Rakesh found and left like a pile for us, like stacked up.
Have a boil.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't think I've had corpse crab in a couple months.
We'll get up there, save a couple for me. I don't know if Barzul eats food. I don't really understand him at all, but I'm gonna go try to start. And I know it got weird, and it was very weird, but that's okay. We can figure this all out. I know we can.
She'll give Tamarind a little pat on the shoulder. I'm glad you think that. Positive outlook is important.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude. I'm very hungry. I'm gonna.
I'll make sure you get a plate, okay?
Thank you. And you'll scuttle off to try to find Barzul.
Elspeth will walk to the top and get some food.
Let's follow Tamarind down to go see what he's up to. I'm curious. I want to know as a DM, what's he up to?
I'm just scuttling about looking for a giant stone man.
Winged stone man.
Yeah, they'll kind of like pop in, pop around. Probably won't go too far low. Like if Barzul is like way super far low down close to like the like caves that they went the terrible noxious gas area, he's probably not going that far down, but he's definitely trying to find Barzul to at least hail him. He's not sure if how his senses work, if he can smell food or not. So
You probably hear Tamarind coming, Barzul. We'll say that so it's not y'all totally miss each other. How far down did you go? So the gas is all the way outside
Right.
of the tower. So you can go all the way down to the bottom of the tower. All 15 floors are clear of gas.
Barzul is sitting in that 14th chamber.
Okay.
The one with the
scratch
tallies?
marks.
Yeah.
all right.
And I think he's been here for a couple hours, sort of tracing some of them.
Yeah, so you hear the awkward flop of like feet, just not at all stealthy, just like a child running down the steps, like at Christmas time. Before I think eventually he does like maintain a little composure when he realizes you're like pretty close by. You can just kind of hear your movements, and so those steps will slow down a little, become a little bit more measured, and then there will be a very soft like wrapped on the side of the stone, just
Sort of turns, and you would notice that he's almost worn a groove into one of these marks, where he's just been standing there for a time. He just sort of turns. Tamarind.
what are you doing down here alone?
Thinking, remembering. Cell reminds me of my life.
What happened? I don't know what's going on with Elspeth. I don't know really how you got here now. I've known Barzul for a very short amount of time, but I really like who you are. But you seem to have so much up here, and none of it is coming out here. And I'm not good at talking or understanding or getting more out of people who are very quiet and don't just tell me what they think about things. And so you don't have to do that, but Barzul, I want to be your friend. And I don't know what happened. I don't know why you did whatever you did to Elspeth Ann. But whoever you are now, whatever you're doing now, you're like me. Something happened to us. And no matter what we did, we still have a chance to do something different, to do something new. And so, if you'd like, I'd really like to officially meet you and know and understand who you are.
I think as he's saying that, he sort of, as Tamron is like unloading, probably from the doorway, I imagine. And he just sort of like has the hand on the wall and just like drags this groove down through the wall. It sort of turns, eyes flaring a little bit. And I think in this moment, I'm sorry, Tamron, will just sort of like almost scream at you, in a sense, just like as a visceral scream. You don't want what you think. Everything I touch dies because of me. This, and he sort of just like gestures with his arms, and the wings snap out. This is a curse, Tamron, for everything, and he just sort of points all the lives, all the years, that place, and he points out to the orchards, is my fault. It's all of our faults, but so much of it is mine.
Tamron will kind of sit with that for a minute and look to
He's
you.
sort of like yelling it, like it's not like
sure.
a quiet.
Oh,
like,
and you can see like he like retreats into his body a little bit when you're yelling at him. He definitely like kind of shivers a little bit with each yell.
I mean, I would say also just the size of the cell when your wings go up. I mean, you're knocking stone off the walls. I mean, it is a violent display in front of you.
As Barzul continues yelling and yelling, whether you acknowledge it, whether it matters or not, you can see like Tamron's eyes start to glisten, and then you see the tears begin to form, like that kind of like holding back crying that just kind of like lingers there at the bottom of your eye as you get kind of that like watery look. But he does listen silently. His arms cross, his head drops, and he stands there in the doorway for a second when you finished, a little in silence. When eventually he looks towards you, up at all of you, in this massive, intimidating form. And he says, whatever's in me now, it hurt the only people I've ever known. It made me an outcast from my family, from my home. It ruined my life. But whatever's inside me allowed me to do things back at that camp that helped people too. Whatever's inside me helped get us here. Helped destroy those things that we fought. Helped us all get through this. I don't know what you did. I don't know the extent of it. But if you had any shred of decency, you would have listened to what Elspeth said last night. You could have single-handedly destroyed this whole world. Because that's easy. It's going to be harder to fix it. And it's going to take more than one person. Just like you said. I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to eat some breakfast crab. You can stay here. And you can sit. And you can choose to put yourself in a cell. Or you can come up, start figuring out how to use what happened to change things. And I don't know if you eat or not. I'm still not sure, and it felt very impolite to ask, and I understand that's besides the point, but I was still curious about it. We can talk about it later if you want to. I don't want to push it. Either way, stay here and live in pain and trap yourself in it. Or figure out what happens next. I hope you want to figure out what happens next. Sorry if that was harsh. I'm still not good at this. And he'll kind of turn his back and start walking away.
I think Barzul will wait. Look at the marks on the wall. Look at the doorway. And I think for the first time since I fell trying to fly, I feel the weight of this body as I take a step towards the door. And another. And I just sort of see all of these marks. To me, all of the lives I have erased. It takes me, I don't know how long, it feels like forever, until I get to the door. Look up the stairs. Look down. And I take a step away. Down a stair. Just breathe out another one of those dusty. Just slam a hand into the wall. And like curse the gnome in like the filthiest dwarvish I can muster, and turn and begin my ascent.
So, with that, let's join Jad as he's slept in. But eventually the sun probably does begin to disturb you, as your vampiric nature does not enjoy being in, as the full, sunlight sort of starts to beam down on the parts of your skin that are exposed. you also begin to smell. Actually, I don't know. You're probably still not breathing, so
Didn't breathe at all last night.
Yeah. No breathing, no heartbeat, no blinking. But you wake up and it's the bright golden light of day instead of that sort of blue moonlight of hope that was hitting you last night.
So is Elspeth there yet, or is it just Rakesh?
We'll say Elspeth has arrived by this point, or is just coming through the the hatch. Tell you what, if you want to have a private moment with Rakesh, we absolutely can have that happen, or we can have Elspeth arriving.
Well, it's a very small moment as Elspeth arrives. Maybe is that
Yeah.
Rakesh collects himself because what's sunlight? Ugh, and then sees Rakesh cooking, and has a moment of profound embarrassment because he fell to pieces in front of Rakesh, and then he's aware that he cuddled with Rakesh all night, so he's very embarrassed. So he looks away, does not meet Rakesh's eyes, and sees the book, realizes the other book is not there, doesn't say anything, puts the book away, as Elspeth comes up, and then his stomach rumbles because he is also hungry, but he cannot eat what Rakesh is cooking. But he's kind of embarrassed and flustered and shuffling his feet this is embarrassing.
Do me a wisdom saving throw.
Yeah.
It's at disadvantage, I believe.
Okay, so I'll just roll twice. 1, 2.
On a 6.
Yeah, 6.
The other voice is fully in charge this morning.
Uh-oh.
It just furious. It's more than embarrassment. It is, you might be trying to cover it as embarrassment, but that voice inside of your head is berating you, is pushing to take control, to there's a mix of the danger he feels from Rakesh, the fact that he lost hold somewhat last night, and
because of him saying that one sentence, right? I love you, right?
And the voice has no recollection of it. Of
the
words being said.
Yeah.
But there is, its presence knows it was dispelled, and especially for a being that had craved for and grasped for such power, to have been all but waved away like a mote of dust is infuriating. That voice is incessant and constant with your every action this morning.
Okay, so as Elspeth comes up, and so initially I was a little bit embarrassed, and then that voice took over, right? As I woke, and suddenly I stiffen, and Elspeth, you probably see me stiffen. Rakesh, you might be cooking, I don't know. But I stiffen, and you can see my my fists clench really hard, and I mumble someone, I'm gritting my teeth, and I'm hungry, because I think Jad thinks that if I feed, I'll be able to control myself more, because that usually happens. But I grit my teeth, and I'm hungry, and both of you can probably hear that.
Rakesh has a skillet going. He's already finished 2 plates. He's been busy this morning. He's taken his rope and tied it to several parts of the edge of this tower and prepared to be able to drop it, so that if they need to climb down, they're able to, rather than have to go all the way back through that.
Right.
So he's
gas.
Right, yeah, he's already dealt with that. He's already got 2 plates of food cooked. These corpse crab claws are larger than normal. They're actually quite large for corpse crab claws. And he's sauteed them with a harder sear on one side than the other and cooked them in pear juice mixed with like just a little bit of sugar that he has because he only has a little bit of sugar left. And a single drop of like, I don't know, snake venom for spice, like something just a little spicy. But like he's gone all out this morning to try to make 4 really great smelling plates. Not setting a plate for Jad because seen what he prefers to eat. And so the smells of that, like the smells of that cooked meat and the fruit, the juice of the fruit and everything.
It's nauseating.
So when you say you're hungry, Rakesh kind of flips over the crab and the skillet and puts it back over the little fire and looks over to you and he says, yes. What do you think we should do about that? What do you normally do?
And then I look at you and I look at the cooking food that smells disgusting. Like, why would you just burn meat? And I look at you and it's hard for you can maybe see that I'm trying to contain myself in some way.
Throw me an insight
which is
check, Rakesh.
Okay. I just got better at this with my level up. An 18.
You immediately recognize the expression as the expression of the dark figure from the imagery last night.
Yeah, and but you can see I'm trying to control myself, and I'm like, I normally feed when I'm hungry. And you can see my eyes are, remember the pupils are going ragged. That's what happens when I'm becoming vampiric. So like the edges of my pupils are becoming.
Rakesh looks and tries to give a half-hearted smile. No, Rakesh is pretty good at faking it. He gives a big smile to Elspeth because Elspeth has come up too, and says, I made you a plate this morning. You're welcome. I hope you like corpse crab.
I haven't had it in a while, but yeah.
Well, this one is for you, please. And he offers up a big plate of this.
Thank you.
Could I have Rakesh and Elspeth make me a Constitution saving throw?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Poisoned in your sleep. Wait, no, sorry.
Yep.
It's a 13 for me.
Yep.
Natural 20.
Elspeth, what are you thinking about this morning as you sort of come from your reverie and go up the stairs?
I think what I'm thinking most is the conversation with Barzul sort of intermingling with the memory of the last time that Elspeth saw her aunt. And just, it seems like these two things should conflict in her mind, but they're intermingling in a way that is leading her to decide whether or not she should forgive Barzul.
Jad,
Because he has his own duty and purpose.
you suddenly say the name Elodie, and your hunger is satiated. As you have fed,
who says,
you do.
Who says the name Elodie?
You do, Jad. You've never heard that name before, but your hunger is satiated, and you suddenly have this name and these little bits of memory as your mind and your hunger reached out and pulled them from Elspeth. You still have the memories, Elspeth. They didn't go away, but you basically psychically fed upon her.
Nice. Yeah,
Elspeth,
I have 2 ways of feeding.
you have 1 less hit die to use if you need to use it before your next long rest.
Rakesh, you maybe see that I like.
So I'm not quite done.
Relax.
Rakesh,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
because his natural 20, you absolutely realize what's just happened. You can, by the look on Elspeth's face, by the change going back from turning vampiric to suddenly not.
So let me ask you, so Jad speaks this word Elodie, which means nothing to Rakesh, right? And then Jad seems to relax with Elspeth being there, taking the food. Is there any kind of like physical indication or any sort of indication?
Elspeth certainly would feel some sort of shock of hearing this name. And I think Elspeth absolutely realizes that something has psychically pulled something from her.
The next time, if you want to eat something, just ask.
How would I respond to that? I look at you and I say it's not always that simple. And I'm gonna say I turn and give Rakesh another really embarrassed look because now the voice is like calmer. I fed.
Yep.
And I just turn and like face the like spire, the direction of the spire where that moonlight that last night Rakesh made. So I just stand there looking out because I'm not gonna eat this food. Also, I don't want to smell it. It's disgusting. I'm just gonna stand here and like be stoic. I'm taking a leaf out of Barzul's book. Just gonna stand here and be stoic.
Okay.
Rakesh watches him for a moment, but he's not gonna because he hasn't figured out how to deal with this yet. So for right now,
you think Jad figured out how to deal with this?
No. So I think he kind of lets him have be by himself for a moment, and just very gently as he goes back to eating his plate number 2 and finishing cooking plate number 3, says up to Elspeth from the edge of the tower, "We should go as soon as everyone is ready. The longer we stay here, the longer we are all in danger."
Yeah. Tamarind has gone to get the other one, and we're just trying to decide a path on where to go.
Do you still wish to go to Falconspire?
I don't know if my place is in Falconspire, but I can help you all get there. If that's where I end up, that's where I end up. We had some conversations last night. I don't know how much longer I want to travel with the gargoyle.
Oh, and may I ask why? Of course, you do not have to answer.
I think we have a bit of a difference of opinion.
You know, Elspeth, the situation that we find ourselves in, it is, well, I have read the entirety of the Book of Eldath, and I can tell you I have never read a story like ours. All of these people changed by something, some of them now with a hunger, some of them with something alien, something terrifying inside them. A giant stone thinking, talking, feeling gargoyle. And then there is you. And you are nothing short of a miracle. All of these people, none of us should work. None of us should be together. All of us very different from each other. But we are strong. And And that means something out here in the wastes.
I spoke with them a little bit about the foolish dream I have. I don't know how much I can accomplish of it before I die. But I at least want to get started in hopes of inspiring others. Maybe we can make this place better than it is.
Perhaps we can, and if I can help, I will. I have a dream as well. That somewhere up there, in that place, there are more of my people. There are people who know how to travel across the world, leave this war behind, find a sacred place. I do not know if I am being naive or if it is true, but I feel compelled to go there.
And maybe we can find it together.
I would like that.
In the meantime, Elspeth will sit down with her plate and begin to eat. Let me tell you a story about Hubert the owlbear.
About this time, probably Tamron arrives.
Oh yeah, just burst forth, like mission mode, like straight to. If there's a plate made, great. If not, he will find a plate. He will figure something out here. He is starving. He's been thinking about this for a while, and the heaviness of that conversation is kind of already beyond his immediate brain space. His food smells good.
When you appear and you start eating food, that's when Jad turns around, and yesterday you saw him give this very like painted on like smile, like whatever, but today you see he's smiling like when he was like, I mounted Barzul, like, you know, when he like is feeling like upbeat, and he smiles at you and he's like, because now he's fed, he's like, you know, better now for a little while, and he says, I'm sorry if I scared you last night.
And Tamron, with a mouthful of crab, will like kind of nod and like get like closer to you, feeling a little bit more comfortable with you, and will actually probably approach and just extend a hand to touch the side of your leg or something, just like to pat it slightly, and just say, "It's okay, it's okay. The thing inside me takes over too sometimes. I don't like to scare people, and sometimes it just happens."
And then I give like I'm still cheerful, but I give like a rueful smile, and I'm like, the problem is I really like scaring people.
Okay. Well, let's just try to figure out. All right, let's just try to figure out how to scare the right people.
And my grin is big and toothy when you say that.
We'll see about then. I don't know. Barzul, how do you enter? Do you enter? Do you pause? You ascended,
Yeah.
cursing in the worst Dwarven truck driver
Yeah.
language, out the caravan driver language that there is.
Yeah, I think Barzul eventually, like, the hatch pushes open, and you see that big stone hand push out, grab, and pull himself up. And he'll sort of turn and look at the four assembled companions.
Rakesh holds up a plate of corpse crab, not knowing if Barzul can eat it or not. And he said, I had plenty. I thought you might want to try it.
It's really good.
When you say it's very good, I like quietly make a face at the back.
Cameron kind of smacks your leg a little bit.
I think Barzul sort of like looks sort of out across back. And then walks over to Rakish, takes the plate. I don't know if I can eat this.
I'm not going to lie to you, my friend. I'm very curious to find out if you are willing to try.
And I'm like, it is not safe to be curious about what things you don't understand eat.
That is true. Perhaps Dalvin is correct. Perhaps you should not try it.
And this time when you say Dalvin, this time I shiver.
I think
That's never happened before.
Barzul looks at Tamarind. Like sort of catches eyes. I think it is time for something new. And we'll sit with like a shutter of stone. I have not been honest with all of you. I am not, was not a gargoyle. Was a hunter. A blight. Looks over at Elspeth. A corruptor and looks at Tamarind. I don't know what I am now. Sort of turns down to the food and will try to eat.
You can decide however this goes for you.
I feel like, so he doesn't have, like, I don't think he has to eat. Like, he doesn't have to eat this gargoyle, but I think there is part of him that wants to experience it again.
Okay.
And has probably had corpse crab.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
And
if you've traveled so much for 500 years, right?
Absolutely.
And I feel like he can eat, but he can't, like, everything is super muted. Like, he doesn't get tastes, doesn't get flavorers.
Yeah.
And I think he turns to Rakish and says, "You cooked it very well." And just like straight out fucking lies.
Yeah.
Because he has no idea how well it's done.
I mean, there's a large part of eating that is nostalgia, especially something like this. And so, I guess, however you want to take this, like I said, I'm 100% here for it. So I love the muted piece.
I think he consumes it.
I think he can absolutely consume it if you'd like him to.
Yeah.
I think Jad, seeing you try to eat this thing, like, has this mixed feeling of revulsion, like, ew, but also like, I think I used to eat once. And so it's just like torn between like, I want to be nostalgic too, but also, ew, this is disgusting. Mm-hmm. One is a mental sensation, one is a bodily sensation, right?
Yep.
So
I will say, Barzul, that as you looked out across the tower, from the tower and sort of looking away from everybody, you thought back to the map, and that with this commanding view that you have over the surrounding area, perhaps being able to orient it here in the daylight, seeing the entire landscape from this high up, perhaps have better luck. And you've seen some of Rakish's abilities, perhaps as a scout himself could assist if you so desired.
Rakesh will say to Barzul too once he sees you actually, because he wasn't sure, it wasn't a joke to him, but he really doesn't understand and he's trying to. So there's a certain amount of curiosity there. He leans in close, like just a little bit closer, and says, if you want, I can try again. If you need more seasoning, less seasoning, give it time. Don't give up. And find something that works for you. Yes?
Who nods, and you see that sort of slight crack of a smile in this stony visage. There's a lot of big teeth in there too, but
real quick, there's kind of a moment of silence or just kind of everyone
Eating. Sounds of eating, right?
Tamron is gonna look towards Elspeth, not say much, but just kind of look in her eyes and give her a very slow nod before turning towards Barzul and approaching him. And we'll walk up and we'll place his hands out open towards one of Barzul's hands and look up at him expectantly, and unsaid, just from his physical actions and stance, Tamron is motioning for you kind of permission, basically, to be able to hold on to your hand. Yeah, Barzul.
I think sort of takes I feel like he ate the plate not no, sorry, he didn't eat the plate. He ate the plate.
I mean, he might have.
Probably could have eaten the plate, but
Don't ruin Rakesh's travel cutlery.
yeah, just sort of sets it down with the other hand and sort of places the hand.
Tamron holds his hand, the same hand he saw, tracing over those marks in the cell over and over and over again, and kind of takes one of Barzul's clawed fingers, looks up at him in his eyes and says, something new. And will very gently guide your hand down to that stone floor, that surface of the roof, and create a new hash mark, just a single little scritch, before returning his gaze to you and saying, day one.
Oh my god.
Sort of just hand pressed against the floor. New things. And we'll sort of pick his hand up in a fist.
And I lean over to Rakesh and I say, if you do anything like that with me, I will bite you.
Yes, of course. And I listened, Alvin.
And I shiver again. You notice me visibly shiver when you say that name.
Can I, what kind of shiver is it? Is it just
Even Jad doesn't know.
Rakesh notices, but he doesn't stop. He says, I have been thinking about this all morning, and if you need to feed, I trust you to take from me, but not too much, yes.
And when you say that, I think of that cool guy who took me to the well. I keep coming back to him, right? And how I ate him. I ripped his entrails open. I didn't even bite his neck. I ripped his stomach open, wow. right? And so that flashes in front of my eyes, and I look at you and I give this really, again, that false grin that I sometimes have, that Tamron saw yesterday. I'm like, noted.
Rakesh awkwardly turns just his body a little bit so that he can kind of like watch the rest of the conversation, and stuffs another piece of corpse crab into his mouth.
Well,
if like things go quiet for a time, he'll finish his plate and say, "So, do we have any idea of where we're going next? Are we all together?"
At that comment, I think Barzul will raise a hand. I think something Tamron found could be of use. Sort of pull out the map, lay it out in front of Rakesh. I think this can help us find where to go. Whether he'll point up towards Falcon's Fire or look back towards the orchards.
Looks down at the map. Rakesh is not unfamiliar with war maps. It's something that he's had to deal with.
You've seen these before. You've used them before. So, either one of you who would like to, you can either do a survival check. You either can roll individually. You can do an intelligence check to try to orient it, and again, you can either roll individually, or if one would like to help the other and give someone advantage, y'all can, however y'all would like to do it. And certainly you've got this whole sort of vista in front of you from this high up to help orient you, so it does lower the DC.
And as you're doing that, as you're rolling, I point to the gyrocopter device thing.
It's just a glider. Think of like a hang glider.
How many people can fit on it, would one say?
I mean, it sort of depends. You have a very diverse group.
Not me.
It is not in great shape, but depending on how you, y'all could probably figure out some way to disperse people. I mean, whether you wanted, there's lots of different ways that this could be done.
So I gesture to Elspeth, and I gesture to Thing. I'm like, hey, miracle worker, can you heal this thing, and can we fly all the way to wherever we need to?
Certainly, yeah.
If it can only fit some of us, I say if it only fits some of us, I'll ride the gargoyle.
I can clean it up. I can't repair it.
And I'm like, oh yeah.
Rakesh or Dawn, up to you. I'm happy to help. I do have proficiency in survival. I will not roll an intelligence check if I don't have to.
So Rakesh is given inspiration he's given 3 of his 4 inspirations out via the food this morning.
Yeah.
That was my idea. So inspiration to Barzul, Elspeth, and Tamron, not to Jad yet.
Yeah.
And so you have inspiration. I'm happy to make so we have to make 2 checks, right? A survival and an intelligence.
One or the other. You don't have to make 2.
Got you.
Maybe while Rakesh and Barzul are discussing and poring over the map, I lean over and I breathe into Rakesh's ear, that wet feeling of blood again, and you get guidance.
Nice.
So I was gonna say, again, however you want to work it out, whether y'all want each roll individually.
I'm happy to help, actually.
So I'll do that to Barzul, sure. Yeah.
And with my help action too, and with the food, Barzul, you gain, in addition to the inspiration, 3 temporary hit points.
Cool.
And you get a D4 from me for the skill check.
Okay.
All right.
You can roll
advantage.
Advantage on a survival check.
At 20.
Nice.
Plus a D4. 3, 27.
So on a 27, well, and I think that's the big thing is that, this is has topographical lines on it. And so, those can get very confusing, and especially at the end of the night and everything that was going on. From up here, it is very quick that you can orient where exactly you are and sort of what's laying before you. I mean, first thing, you're able to find the road that you're on, and there are marks on this road that you, again, just weren't able to pick out before in the just sort of busyness of the whole map. As you get into the details, you sort of start following the road with your stony finger, and you can see that there are 3 marks along it that are notated for subject acquisition, and your eye would easily point out these are places with that would be easy ambush points. That this is where they had, ambushes were set to pick up more subjects for their experimentation. You see, and can sort of be pointing out to them, if everyone sort of gathered around the map, be pointing out the map. You're able to see, the top of the plateau. You see Falcon Spire, sort of sprawling across the eastern edge, but then more to the west, next to the large forest marked as the Midnight Weald, you see another sort of settlement marked as Ravenrook. And then beyond that, a little bit more towards the far as the Stonewell. And sort of as you point this out, are other folks sort of looking over their shoulders, specifically Rakeesh and Elspeth. Y'all can roll me a history check at advantage as he points out Ravenrook and the Stonewell.
That's a flat 17 for me.
Great.
18 as well.
Yep, 18 for Rakeesh. So both of you, I think, immediately recognize Elspeth just because of living in human lands and seeing so many people who are sort of the fallout from the war. Ravenrook is actually very much known for its vineyards. It creates a wine that is said to be in some way connected to the Shadowfell, and that will take people's memories. And for people who will drink it, they drink it basically to try to get rid of the memories and the horrors of war. Rakeesh, same thing. You would have heard of people. It is very addictive as people try to erase the pain from their lives. Many of the people that you helped, would be aware of this, and that Brother Kendall often spoke of it as just sort of being this anathema, because it basically stole people's stories. But you also will recognize from the letter you read that it was in fact the Stone Ravens who did not want to participate and thought that the work that this mage and this Mages Guild was doing was they were so objected to it that they lit that beacon as a sign of sanctuary, that for those who would come, that they would be protected in response to finding out about this work that was being done by the San Barthanes. So you see that on the map and those 2 places marked as well. But the biggest thing, especially on that roll, you pick this up, Barzul, and maybe it's just that you glance out because you had mentioned the orchards. You sort of glance out across, and your stone hand comes across, maybe even sort of picking out some of the places from Thargon's life. And you come across a spot that's marked as Site 2. And as you pointed out, Rakeesh, you will note that it is relatively close to where the grove was.
Where I came from.
Where you came from. The grotto.
So Rakeesh is doing his best to kind of help you map out, like he knows this place here, and you're able to point out, whatever you point out. Wrings his hands a little bit, rocks back and forth, and gives a shaky smile to who he thinks is Dalvin, who he wants to be Dalvin. And a look over to Elspeth, because Elspeth told him that she doesn't know if she can travel with Barzul, and ever since he's arrived for breakfast, she's been very quiet. And just to try to get a sense of kind of the mood, he says, the Stone Raven, this orchard here, they lit the beacon. I know this place. I have felt the draw of its promise to forget the things that we wish we could. But it is not safe to drink the wine. I think it is possible these people, I do not know, could be dangerous as well. Does anyone know of this place here? And he taps the map of the orchard.
I don't know. And Elspeth will look at the map and sort of trace, I think, the familiar caravan routes.
Absolutely. Up to the north of where you are, you can follow the road and sort of even your path across the
this I know. And this part I crossed on foot myself. It's where I ran into the vulture clans and the werewolves. I don't know if forgetting's the right path.
Where Dalvin and I came from. Beautiful, beautiful grotto. Refugees would come there, much like they came to the camp below, but our haven, it was better. A soft stream brook. People caring for one another, sharing stories with one another. There was magic there. I ran from that place, and I left all of the people I knew there behind. Even you, Dalvin, I left you behind. But oh,
sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So if you say I left you behind, but you started saying, oh, it's a wonderful place, and then I interrupt you and I'm like, perhaps it is not as wonderful anymore, seeing as what happened to me.
I know. There were these mercenaries that came there. They slaughtered almost everyone. This place here, not the orchard, but here, and he points to Site 2 on the map, which is back in the other direction, opposite direction. Absolutely. From where we're currently heading. This, I believe, is where my orchard was. And they took the children. They took others. And I believe that they must have done something to you, Dalvin. These same people that are here in this tower, the same ones who are experimenting on people across this land. They're the ones that destroyed our home.
And Jad is like, not feel, for some reason he thinks I should be feeling sad or angry about this. He's not. He's like,
Rakesh is like desperately looking for what you're not giving him.
yeah. And I think Jad is like, I think I should feel upset about this, but I am not. And I just nod. And I'm like, then and okay, you know what I say? It's lovely reminiscing about the past right now, but where are we going?
I think it should be up to her. He gestures towards Elspeth. I will do what I can to help. But you are the one with the power. People will come and try to take it from you. We could fight, we could run, we could look for aid in the orchard. We could do anything.
We could, yeah. I know the one before me had her purpose. I have mine. I don't quite know what it is yet. But maybe together we can all find it. Then she'll make eye contact with Verzul. You had your purpose. But now it's time for a new one. Fresh start. I don't forgive you yet. But I'll work with you.
I think for the first time, his gaze doesn't slip away. And he says, we go. I go. Where are you?
I think the orchards are a good place to start.
They are doing...
The ones that lit the beacon, maybe? Forgetting isn't the answer, but maybe it's just a place to start.
The ones who lit the beacon. That is a bit of a journey. And I'll sort of stab at the sort of sight to point finger. This is another one of these places.
Like here?
Yes.
Hmm.
Those with the beacon are up there. It is a haven, at least for you, for now. You want something different. If you want to heal, maybe this is another place. Stopping these people is a better place to start.
Baby steps. All right.
I grin and I'm like, what strange bedfellows we make. And I like nudge Barzul on the word bedfellows. And then I'm like, well, I'm getting bored of this conversation. Let's start climbing down. And I leap off the side of the tower and like so that I land onto the the side of the tower. And I look because I'm gonna climb down horizontally or vertically, and I'm like, let's go. And I start walking down the side of the tower.
Rakesh takes a deep breath and just starts picking up plates and like quickly cleaning them a little bit and repackaging them tightly and putting them in the sort of side pouch in his travel bag.
Elspeth just looks at the plates and casts prestidigitation on them to clean them off.
Nice.
Miracle worker.
And then looks at Rakesh's robes that have been Those look like they were a pretty color once, and we'll clean
Wait, now
that
they're
away.
bloodstained from last night a little bit, right?
Yep. Get rid of the blood and probably years of dirt so that they are that original, almost seafoam color.
Yes. Rakesh like chokes up a little bit. He's not expecting to get emotional at this, but he can't. He's not going to show it right now. There's too much going on. He just sort of, thank you.
Not a problem. Didn't take any energy.
You hear a minor illusion, like enhanced voice, come up like, "Hurry up!"
He is right. Continues to pack.
Let's go.
And I think with that, we will go ahead and wrap up for tonight. Especially since we have Bird back, so we can, so you can say goodnight. Hey, dude, you missed a little bit of forward planning. We can catch you up. At least we didn't lose you during one of the big scenes, man.
Tamron was sitting there eating his crab contently the entire time, and just kind of nodding. So there we go.
Perfect. Speaking of, we'll start with you as we sign off. Bird, tell us where we can find you when we can't find you.
Hey, I'm Bird. When my computer works, I'm available on Twitter and Twitch at Bird vs. Plane as a charity streamer, popping around things. This was awesome. This was like the deepest we've gotten, and I loved this episode so much. So great job, everybody. This was rad.
Cool. Next up is Carl.
Yep, I'm Carl. You can find me on Twitter at Carl Nelson or on Instagram and other places at Visions of Carl. I'm a designer and occasional streamer, and this was an incredible episode, and I love all of these people.
Next up, we have Don.
Hey, I'm Don. I'm a tabletop role-playing game designer and GM. That's what I do. You can find me on Twitter if you want. You don't have to. I'm enjoying this campaign here, playing with everybody. I really I enjoyed it. This is a great campfire session for us. I think we needed to have one campfire session where nobody was running off or getting eaten or whatever it was. This is eating. Well, we accomplished that still though. So at least we got some of the usuals.
Yeah.
I had a blast though. I'm looking forward to next week. Thank you all so much.
Awesome. Next up, Anita.
Hello, I'm Anita or Panita or Critical Misses. You can find me everywhere at Panita or at Critical Misses. I am a TTRPG streamer, and you can find me over on my channel, Critical Misses. Fridays, you can find me there for a game of Fear Itself. That's a horror game that is called The Growing of the Dim. Saturdays, you can find me there for Morning Ritual, which is a TTRPG talk show. And sometimes I'm just there behind the scenes, running Tech for streams as well. This Sunday, you can find me over on Kobold Press's channel for we're coming back with the triumphant return of Into the Southlands. So you can find me as my Ravenfolk Artificer there.
Very, very cool. And last but not least, Sharang.
So I'm Sharang Biswas. You can find me on Twitter at Sharang Biswas. Or on HIO as Astrolinguist, where some of my stuff is there. Quick plug, the anthology of queer sex-positive games that Lucian Khan and I co-edited, Honey and Hot Wax, just got nominated for Game of the Year at the IGDN Awards. So check it out if you want a Game of the Year nominated anthology of sexy LARPs. Check that out. And a quick plug, Oma Keeling over at Container Magazine just did a short documentary about taboo topics in games and censorship and stuff of games. I was one of the featured artists / game people. It's a half-an-hour documentary that was part machinima. So do check that out if you're interested in especially about queerness and sexuality and how games represent them.
Very, very cool. And I am Tall Squall. I'm your DM. You can follow me all over social media as Tall Squall. Do some writing, do some stuff. We are starting right now casting for our next 8-session adventure, which will be starting mid-September. If you haven't already, send me a DM and I will send you information. So how for September through November, you could be streaming with us and be a part of the next story that we tell. Until next time, gather your friends together and tell a story, because that's what it's all about. You all have a great evening. Bye-bye.